We are back. This is Green Mountain Mornings on KVT Talk, where Brattleboro listens 23 minutes past the top of the hour. I'm your host, Olga Peters, and welcome back on the phone, Randy Holhut from the Commons. Hey, Randy.
Hello again.
Hello again. And a reminder to listeners that this segment of Green Mountain Mornings is being filmed by Brattleboro Community Television. You can catch this Green Mountain Mornings tonight later on their internet site, brattleboro.tv, or on Channel 10 or Channel 8 on TV for those who still have TV. And this segment is sponsored by Brattleboro Savings and Loan. So, Randy, tell me, what is happening at BMH? I guess there was a piece in the Commons this week about a very expensive mistake.
A very expensive mistake, a $1.655 million mistake, that they paid this amount in civil claims that the hospital admitted because they presented some false claims for Medicare and Medicaid, and that the problem resulted in coding errors for lab work that was ordered but not properly coded. And that's happened over almost a 2 years period, and they said that they've since taken corrective action and such, but it took a whistleblower to say, hey, this isn't right, and tell the feds that this was going on. But Richard Davis wrote a piece about it in the Voices section. This was a column that the Reformer didn't run. They censored it, and Richard wanted us to run it.
So is it, just to be clear, is it a opinion piece? Is it...
Well, it was just what Richard's column they writes for the Reformer on the op-ed page.
Gotcha, thank you.
But so this is just kind of, I would say, reported opinion because he knows how the hospital works.
Yeah,
but he also has a lot of questions because this is it's the community's hospital, and the hospital hasn't quite owned up to a few things, like we haven't really heard, as Richard Davis says, and I'll read from his column here, quoting, "Why have we not heard from the hospital CEO, Steve Gordon, or the hospital board president, Patty O'Donnell? Ultimately, they are responsible for what happens at our hospital, yet they've been much too silent on this issue." Again, reading from Richard's column, "Gordon and O'Donnell are smart people, and it seems likely they knew something was amiss during the time of the alleged violation, especially since an employee was trying to tell them something wasn't right."
An employee within the hospital?
Yes.
Okay.
"We also need to question the leadership of an institution that makes such an enormous mistake. The buck stops with Gordon, and he must take responsibility for what happened. We need to be able to meet the CEO face-to-face and ask him some hard questions. He owes it to the public to tell us exactly what happened and how he will make up for this very large financial shortfall." This is Richard asking from Richard's column, because he's asking some really questions. I mean, almost $1.7 million. That's a significant amount of money for the hospital. The hospital is already, dependent on the federal government to keep in operation because of all the Medicare and Medicaid money that it gets, and because of the population it serves. That's a lot of Medicare and Medicaid patients.
Do we know at this time what you mentioned that the mistake was coding error, but was it on purpose or was it by accident? Was it codes changed and BMH just didn't keep up? I mean, do we know?
Well, I really don't know what happened, but Richard's the closing to Richard's column speaks volumes to what the situation is there. It's difficult to understand, or I'll pick up from the end here. This is the same hospital that many of my nurse friends tell me is having a hard time recruiting nurses. They tell me they don't feel valued and that morale among nursing staff is very low. The hospital is using a number of traveling nurses at an expense far above that of local nurses, and that only compounds financial and morale issues. There's a lot that the leaders of our community hospitals should be telling us. I hope they will soon set up a community forum where they can tell us how they are moving ahead and how they will find a way to create a better climate of goodwill within their institution. Because we've been hearing, the end of Richard's piece. Mm-hmm. We've been hearing a lot of backstage talk about how the brain drain at Brattleboro Memorial Hospital, how many people have left, mm-hmm. Either retired because it was time for them to retire, or decamped for neighboring hospitals.
Yeah,
and it does affect the care at BMH.
Mm-hmm. So does the Commons have plans to move forward with any article on this, or have you heard back from...
I'll be absolutely frank here. We have no way of doing this because of our financial situation.
Right.
We've been struggling with various issues too. Mm-hmm. And we don't have the reporting staff right now to be able to dive into something that complicated of the Byzantine ins and outs of healthcare and Medicare and Medicaid and billing and how it's done and how errors are made and what can be done to stop them. Mm-hmm. I mean, this is a similar problem that happened at the Brattleboro retreat.
Oh, right. So, okay. It's tricky because, yes, this is something that deserves journalistic scrutiny, but yeah, you only have one full-time reporter, and that's just what it is.
Yeah, that's unfortunately just how it is, and our esteemed competitors across town, they're just as strapped too. But this is why we need this is why we need journalism, and why it should be supported. Because without reporters, without the boots on the ground to be able to check into things like that, things like this happen and go uncovered.
Mm-hmm. Hello, beautiful people. This is Green Mountain Mornings on KVT Talk, where Brattleboro listens. 37 minutes past the top of the hour. I am your host, Olga Peters, welcoming back to the show via the technology of telephones, Randy Holhut. Good morning, Randy.
Good morning, Olga.
And thank you for joining us from the Commons today. You shared with me a very interesting couple of emails. The first from the Vermont GOP party, or the Republican Party, and then the second from now officially gubernatorial candidate Christine Hallquist. And basically, it's about making Vermont great again, quote unquote. Does that sound familiar to anybody?
Yes, I wonder where that came from.
We might be able to find some red caps or I guess it would have to be a green cap.
Or something like that. But anyways, the timing of that email, of course, was right to coincide with the governor signing S-55, the very modest gun bills. Mm-hmm. Then raising the age for being able to buy a firearm and limiting the size of magazines for rifles and pistols, and the being able to take weapons away from people who are in psychiatric distress, or there's a reason to believe that they might cause harm to others. Mm-hmm. And taken as a whole, they're modest steps, and no one's coming to take the weapons away.
Yeah, no one's confiscating guns
or confiscating the big those large magazines that. Those 30, 40, 50 round clips that for rifles are. So,
yeah, if you own them, the government's not taking them back, even if you can't buy them from now on.
Yes. So, we get this hissy fit of a letter from Team VT-GOP, as it was signed off on. Mm-hmm. And, it starts, I don't know about you, but I'm fed up. Underlined and bolded. If you are, sign this petition. Vermont was once heralded as the star that never set, a true bastion for the kind of traditional conservative values that our nation was founded on. As I write this, these days seem long gone. The author doesn't identify him or herself.
Mm-hmm.
In recent years, our state has been co-opted by the liberal elite. Out-of-touch politicians have been hell-bent on stripping away every right and freedom that Vermonters hold dear. This is not the time to surrender. We must continue to fight. Though the days of the traditional conservative Vermont we all grew up in may seem gone, it does not mean it is gone for good. 2018 is a critical year for conservatism in Vermont. If we're ever going to return Vermont back to its former glory, we need to band together and toss out every last liberal elitist politician in Montpelier. Will you join us? By standing together, we can truly make Vermont great again. And, that's the letter that got sent out.
Mm-hmm.
And you kind of scratch your head and wonder, what the hell, hey?
Yeah. Yeah, and I have to say, when I hear buzzwords, and I don't care if it's coming from the Republican Party, the Democrat Party, Progressive Party, I don't care. But when I hear people using words like, well, the others, the elite, or we're traditional and they're not, or something like that, those kind of divisive words, it's fingernails on a chalkboard to me.
Yeah, well, those are the dog whistle words
Mm-hmm.
that get used for that. But it's pretty clear that they're treating the S-55 as one of those. This is the line that's been crossed, and we cannot tolerate this, and we're going to vote out as many politicians as we can get our hands on because of this. In other words, like the Civil Unions Bill back in 2000.
Oh, right. That.
Which wiped out the Democratic majority in the House and cost Michael Bohosky speakership.
Mm-hmm.
But history shows they did the right thing, and 2 elections later, the Democrats won back the House.
Right.
And have not relinquished it since. But the newest Democratic candidate for governor, Christine Hallquist, wrote a response to that email blast from the Vermont Republican Party.
Mm-hmm.
She wrote, I never thought I would have to defend the magic of Vermont to fellow Vermonters, but today the Vermont GOP unveiled their theme for the 2018 election, Make Vermont Great Again, to which I have one response, Vermont is already great. But we knew that. Today I wanted to send a message thanking the governor for working across the aisle on common-sense gun control, but instead the Vermont Republican Party decided to embrace the divisive language of the president. This is a dangerous precedent that cannot go unchallenged, Christine wrote. Mm-hmm. Continuing from Christine's letter, Vermont welcomed me in a way that I'm not sure that any other state would have. It allowed me to be my true self while I was the CEO of a public utility. This goes to the heart of what makes Vermont great. We embrace and support each other no matter what. And the fact that, yes, Christine made her transition as a transgender woman,
mm-hmm.
and very publicly,
mm-hmm.
and very supported by the people she worked with at the Vermont Electric Cooperative.
Right.
So, and that's the kind of thing that is very Vermont,
mm-hmm.
that we do embrace and support each other no matter what. Now, back to Christine's letter. I've seen a worrying trend of growing nativism across Vermont. The Vermont Republican Party vice chair denounced S-55 as a, quote, flatlander law, end of quote. The Vermont Republican Party has shown itself willing to marginalize and stigmatize those it does not agree with, just as the president does. I used to hope the moderates in the Republican Party could bring us back to civility. Today I see that hope is gone. So let me be clear, Vermont is for everyone, no matter where they were born. I fear that in this age of dehumanizing immigrants, this rhetoric that, quote, only true Vermonters were those born here, will be another tool in the hands of those who spread hatred. We have no say in where we're born, but we've all decided that Vermont is home. I believe in a Vermont for all Vermonters.
And this is such a powerful letter, I feel, because not only is it speaking someone's beliefs, but as a new candidate, Christine just really, man, she just put her flag in the ground right there. Like, there's no doubt what she believes, what she stands for. This is not, sometimes you get candidates letters and they can be a little like a little wishy-washy, and she makes no bones about it. Well done.
Well, in this conversation, you as the native Vermonter and me as the adopted Vermonter, although where I grew up in Massachusetts, it's a town about the size of Dummerston.
Right.
So I've no small town life. That's all, and I've pretty much spent my entire life in tiny towns.
Mm-hmm.
And Vermont is a place where there are two types of people who live here. The people who get what Vermont is, and the people who come here and want to make Vermont like where they came from.
Mm-hmm. And that can be a tension. That can be a real tension.
And that's the real tension, and not the native versus flatlander thing, but the difference between those who understand what Vermont is about and those who don't quite understand what Vermont is about.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, why I embraced Vermont and actually wanted to live here,
mm-hmm.
because I felt it was a place where there was freedom in terms of being able to be who you want to be,
mm-hmm.
and just a different vibe up here that wasn't I didn't find elsewhere around New England.
Mm-hmm.
Vermont, and I've been here for almost 30 years now,
mm-hmm.
and more time than I've spent down where I was born in Massachusetts.
Okay.
Actually, and I know I will never be considered a Vermonter. That's why I've used the adopted modifier on the term.
Mm-hmm.
But I would like to think that there's room for me here.
Mm-hmm. Well,
as someone who respects the why we love Vermont.
Right. Well, and I guess that is my concern is and I said this, I think, in the 7:00 hour, that if we want to brand something real or fake, it's fine if we do it with maple syrup. But we need to be really careful about that with people, especially if we want to maintain our strong communities, which Vermont is known for. Then one thing we need to do is to have those inclusive communities. And if we're railing against each other around real or fake, and that real or fake basically falls down on, do I agree with you or not? If you're being a good little boy or girl and doing what I want you to do, then this week you get to be real. But if next week you're disagreeing with me and not being a good little boy or girl, then you get to be fake. That's, we really just don't have time for that.
And the point of Vermont is that it's still on a human scale.
Mm-hmm.
We still have self-government here. We have a part-time legislature, with people who aren't career politicians,
mm-hmm.
that you'll see at the grocery store or at the farmer's market or on Main Street,
mm-hmm.
or at the post office. You still have a say over things that are important in your life. You still have institutions that are close to you, school and town government and even the road foreman that you can call down to the town garage if you feel like your road needs an extra load of gravel on it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the kind of thing that's really missing of self-government.
Mm-hmm.
The difference. the difference between wanting to be governed and wanting to be ruled, as some have described it. And government is about us, all of us. Mm-hmm. It's not them. They're our representatives. We choose them in elections. We send them to Montpelier for 6 months of the year. Mm-hmm. They are us.
Right. I suppose to a certain extent that is a weakness in how we as society views the political system, especially between the parties. We tend to view it as a horse race or as a wrestling match, when what we should be demanding from both our parties is what you're putting forward in policy good for your constituents? Is it going to make their lives better? And that should really be where the question is. And so we should be perhaps demanding from our political parties, hey, folks, get your act together and work together, problem solve. That's what we need you to do.
Yes, to be practical and know that you don't in politics you don't always get what you want.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, compromise is not always a dirty word.
Yeah, and that's unfortunately it's been made into one by the reason why Paul Ryan is deciding to spend more time with his family is because he's been painted in the corner by the extreme members of his caucus, mm-hmm. who feel that compromise with Democrats is akin to treason. And that
which is insane.
And as such, there's no way that the Republicans can pass any legislation whatsoever, even though they're in the majority, because of how fractured their caucus is.
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, and I want to draw your attention to the Vermont GOP article or the letter. I have to say, I don't know, what do you think? I'm not sure that our country was founded on either liberal or conservative values. But I would say that in the Constitution, everyone is created equal, was probably radical for the time. It wasn't conservative or liberal, just plain old radical.
Well, this was, the principles of the Enlightenment. Mm-hmm. This is Rousseau.
Right. I forgot about that.
And all the people who drafted the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution were big fans of the Enlightenment and the idea that all men, but they had some work to do there.
Yeah, they were still products of their time. And
the idea that the government is not derived from the deities; it's derived from the people who are being governed, mm-hmm. and made with the consent of the governed.
Right.
And it's not bibbly bobbly boo. You have democracy. You have to work at it.
Mm-hmm. Well, on that note, Randy, we are out of time. But thank you so much for coming in this week, and thank you for bringing Christine and the Vermont GOP's letters to my attention.
Well, I was not sure whether you were on the mailing list of their campaign, because I sometimes think your little radio show gets forgotten.
Sometimes we do, but that's okay. I'll go make a noise.
And it shouldn't be that way, because you're among the last of your kind.
Oh, I'm a dinosaur. Roar. But am I a meat eater or a vegetarian? There's the question. I will, Randy and I will be talking again on future shows, but for now, here is Pat Pagano's weather forecast. And hey, Randy, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you.